The House will come back to order. Mr. Schiebel, reports of committees of reference.
Committee on Finance, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bills 306 as amended, 309 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. Committee on Health and Human Services, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bills 1748 as amended, 71 and 124 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. Committee on Judiciary, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bills 281, 288 as amended, and 304 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move for the call of the House.
Members, a call of the House has been requested. I do need 10 or more members to stand or raise their hands. Nope, can't do that. The motion is properly sustained. Will the sergeants please close and lock the doors? Mr. Schiebel, please turn on the chimes. Members, please press your buttons to indicate you are present. And Mr. Schiebel, in about 2 minutes, start calling the names of those who are absent. Sergeants, please locate members who are missing.
Representatives Bacon, Barone, Byrd, Brown,
Excused.
Brown is excused. Camacho, Lindsay, Mabry, Smith, Soper, Sukla, and Representative Weinberg.
All right, Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that the call be raised.
The call is raised. Madam Majority Leader.
The fun part. Madam Speaker, I move the following bills be added to the special orders calendar on Saturday, May 3rd, 2025 at 4:18 p.m. Senate Bill 34, Senate Bill 27, Senate Bill 75, Senate Bill 189, Senate Bill 272, Senate Bill 17, Senate Bill 297, Senate Bill 302, Senate Bill 288, Senate Bill 281, Senate Bill 320, Senate Bill 319, and Senate Bill 316.
Seeing no objection, the bills listed by the Majority Leader will be added to the special orders calendar today, Saturday, May 3rd at 4:18 p.m. Representative Lukens. Members, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Lukens will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen on iLegislate and in today's folder on your box account. Bills will be laid over upon the motion of the majority leader, and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Schiebel, please read. Oh, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to lay over consideration of Senate Bill 310 as amended until after Senate Bill 299.
So moved. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 34. Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Majority Leader.
Correction. Madam Chair, let me reread that. I move to lay over consideration of Senate Bill 310 as amended until after Senate Bill 281.
So moved. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 34.
Senate Bill 34 by Senator Kipp, also Representative Basenecker, concerning voluntarily waiving the right to purchase a firearm.
Representative Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. An honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you.
I move Senate Bill 34.
To the bill. Rep. Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill is about saving lives by empowering individuals to proactively protect themselves during periods of crisis. We know that mental health challenges and major life stressors can affect anyone, and oftentimes suicide attempts are impulsive and brief, and we want to empower people to protect themselves, to voluntarily protect themselves, and I would urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Rep. Luck. Rep. Bradley.
I'll start it off. I'll kick us off. Thank you, Madam Chair. While this is not a horrific Second Amendment violation bill, I still have some questions for it. They define suicide as being a spontaneous, brief moment of impulsivity. And so I question, when there's a 3-day waiting period on guns, how impulsive is suicide going to be? I mean, we continue to introduce these gun bills, and suicide rates continue to kind of stay the same. So I keep wondering, why is suicide not coming down, especially suicide but with guns, not coming down with all these gun legislation we keep passing? We passed a 3-day wait list, and it doesn't really, according to my research, show a significant difference based on suicide by firearm. So it seems like we keep passing these gun bills, but it's not doing what the people that are passing these bills want it to do. And then I just had a lot of other questions as far as, and the bill sponsors have been great in trying to answer these questions, but you know, with the spirit of AI, the online portal, that makes a lot of us on the right very nervous, even though you can voluntarily file that. Are we going to be taken off this or out of this portal? CBI is completely behind on everything. We have listened to that all session. How long is it going to take us to come off of that portal? If we file for revocation, how long is it going to take CBI to take us off? We know that it remains in effect for 30 days. If somebody files against you, is there something in, is there checks and balances? I think we're just worried about the checks and balances being there when there's a false claim. And they said that the bill drafter came in and did say that if fictitious filing is an F6 or an M2, so there is some stuff there, but in the world of AI, it's just very concerning with things like this. And then if you have a contact person that you designate, what happens if that contact person says, no, I don't think that this person needs to have a firearm? So there's just a lot of unanswered questions. Again, not the worst legislation we've seen against gun rights, but I'm just going to kind of sum up the way I feel about this bill. The bill represents a well-intentioned effort to reduce the number of individuals who die by suicide using firearms. However, the need for a bill that creates a voluntary waiver process is not clear, considering existing barriers to firearm purchase. I mean, we hear in this building every year new restrictions preventing us from owning a gun. There exists no compulsion for the purchase of firearms. Further, in the state of Colorado, the purchase of a firearm cannot be done in a swift time period following a hasty, unstable decision. So again, a lot of people came to testify that said suicide is done in a spontaneous, brief moment of impulsivity. Well, we have a 3-day waiting period. And now that the governor has signed into law Senate Bill 25003, there's about 8 different hoops you have to jump through to own a firearm. And we heard from people in rural districts that the FFLs aren't even going to be able to give these safety training courses for months at a time. So I just question the need for yet another piece of legislation. I think we're actually already doing this in this state because of all the legislation we have put on people in Colorado. Further, in the state of Colorado, again, cannot be done swiftly. Participants will be put in a federal or state computer-based system to identify prohibited purchases of firearms, which raises concerns over privacy of personally identifying information. And again, the system hasn't been developed. CBI is so far behind on so many other things. I mean, it just leaves a lot of questions. The bill does not specify the maximum amount of time the Bureau would be allowed to take to approve a revocation of this waiver. That concerns me too. So once you put yourself on it, 30 days later you can take yourself off, but where does it tell us that you're actually going to be taken off? It only states the Bureau must verify the person's identity before accepting the revocation and that the waiver remains in effect for 30 days after the Bureau accepts the revocation. But it doesn't even tell us how they verify the person's identity. And with the days of AI, that concerns me. Can an ex-husband report on a ex-wife? Can an ex-wife report on an ex-husband? They know their driver's license numbers. They know their social security numbers. How are we verifying that? That's not clear in this bill. This could leave someone waiting months for their revocation to be approved. And in that process, being the 3rd least safe state and the 8th most violent state, the 4th highest in rape, what if somebody was momentarily in a period of crisis and now they want to protect themselves? And now we have no clue how long it's going to take the Bureau to allow them to purchase a firearm. This is a big problem with this bill. This could leave someone waiting months for their revocation to be approved. If they did so because they believe they are in danger, this could be seriously damaging. This bill also does not mention if there is a specific amount of time allowed between applying for a voluntary waiver and applying for a revocation of the waiver. I'm glad everyone's listening so intently. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rep. Bacon. I appreciate it. For all of you all still so intently listening, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Rep. Bacon. I appreciate it. I mean, it's just a firearm bill, no big deal. Overall, this bill lacks some imperative details that would protect the constitutional rights of Coloradans. So I know where the bill's sponsor's intent is, but when we're talking about going against people's Second Amendment rights, we have to be really intent on the computer-based system and how we're identifying people that are put into this computer-based system and when people get their rights restored back. So for now, I urge a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my colleague brought up a lot of good points. I think the issue that we have, there's nothing really to address issues with the mental health side of this, but the fact that this is something that comes down to some personal accountability, when somebody feels like they might be impulsively doing something and want to be shut off from being able to do that, I guess having the government do that for you is the way to do this. The thing that I had my concerns, just like my colleague who spoke, with this being something that's weaponized against somebody by somebody pretending to be them. And that to me is concerning when a lot of other things that we do, whether it's financially related or otherwise, requires multiple forms of identification. And I think this is one of those situations where those multiple forms of identification would be crucial and kind of be common sense, so that we are making sure that we don't have this, especially in domestic matters, being used against somebody coercively or abusively. And if we're going to have the government intervening on things, but it's something that's being weaponized, I think that we should at least give the government the tools to be accountable and accurate, efficient with how they're measuring this, and making sure that it's not used as a form of coercion, a form of abuse, and otherwise just weaponized. So I move L004 and ask it to be properly displayed.
One moment. L4 is properly displayed. Rep. Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what this amendment does is it requires the use of government identification, but it requires somebody to present two forms of government identification to be able to properly be identified as the person that's submitting this. They are properly identified. It's not somebody pretending to be somebody else. It's not even potentially a false identification. But two forms of proper government ID, government-issued ID, where somebody can easily say, this is me, I promise, please put me on this list so that I can't purchase firearms. That way, we don't have this being used as a method of coercion, a method of abuse, and otherwise a tool for weaponizing against somebody else. So I encourage an aye vote.
Rep. Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last Saturday for bipartisanship. Last Saturday. There's always next year. This is a great amendment. This is what we talked about in committee. We were worried about AI and false reporting and all of those things. And so this is a great amendment to have a government-issued identification to make sure that the person on the list is actually the person on the list. If we're really trying to curb suicide, let's make sure it's the actual person, because what if it's not the actual person? Then somebody else gets reported and the actual person goes through the cracks. This is a perfect amendment to do it. I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to my colleague for what I would say is the shared concern around making sure that the process is accurate and also correctly identifies personally identifying information related to the person making the request. If you'll note in the bill on page 5, lines 24, 25, we give the executive director of the department, DPS, rulemaking authority to be able to implement rules to this same effect. I would also say that CBI already has processes in place as it relates to firearm sales in our state and the verification of information that is submitted to make sure that the information matches with the person making the request. My concern with specifically lines 12 through 14 and 15 through 17 of the amendment is that it actually might be less of a stringent standard than CBI or DPS would put into place as a result of the bill. We also know that false reporting would be subject to 18.5.113, criminal impersonation. That is an F6 or an M2 in our state, depending upon how it is charged. It could also be subject to 18.8.503, perjury in the second degree, which is an M2 in our state. So there are some pretty severe penalties for someone who would falsely submit information. And I believe that CBI is best positioned to be able to make sure that the information submitted is accurate to the person making the request. We ask for a no vote.
Rep. Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, in talking about purchasing a firearm and the rules that are in place for purchasing a firearm versus the rule-making authority, I think if we just put it clear as day in the legislation that we're trying to put forward for the rules, as this process would be pertaining to, I think it would be wise and it would be best practice to be able to give the guidelines, making sure that we have those guardrails in place to where somebody's desperate, they're not going to care about false identity and the charges that can come with that. I think what somebody's trying to do is just simply hurt or harm somebody by putting something in place where they can't purchase firearms. And not only can they not purchase firearms, but if they attempt to purchase a firearm while on this list, they get a civil infraction and a $25 fee. So this is something that easily will be misused and used to weaponize and otherwise coerce and abuse somebody further, especially in those volatile and toxic relationships. I think this is the best thing we can do moving forward with this legislation, to be able to make sure that it's at least got the safeguards to not be misused by some a bitter partner or whatever family member that might be trying to cause harm to somebody else. So I would encourage an aye vote.
Is there any further, Rep. Luck?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm curious from the bill sponsors, what, if anything, you're contemplating that CBI would have in addition to this? So just so I have understanding of what you're thinking that they might introduce or implement to assure the proper identity. But I'm also wondering if this amendment were to be changed to say at minimum these two forms of identification, whether there would be any traction in that regard, such as to open the door and allow for them to continue to expand and adjust as technology requires, but also assures us that there is some statutory guideline, baseline minimum of what would be required in order to assure that identity is verified.
And members, a reminder to please keep it quiet so we can hear what is happening in the well. Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we feel very comfortable, given the important role that CBI has in relation to firearm sales in our state at present, that they are capable and best suited to be able to determine the processes whereby a person's identity would be verified. And so with those pieces in place, I fear that ultimately the standard we put into place, even by saying at minimum, might ultimately be less restrictive than, or somehow a detriment to their existing processes that they go through to verify through the NICS system someone's background at present, and to verify they are who they are. And so that's why we're respectfully asking a no vote. I would say it's a shared goal, right? We want to make sure that the person is the person and it's not weaponized. I just feel very strongly that the bill we have in front of us does it.
Rep. Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this conversation. I guess I'm a little less assured in light of the larger context of what's going on at CBI with respect to other very important things like checking on all of the forensic evidence and there being a backlog there. So if what we've already assigned has not been satisfied, it doesn't give me much confidence that they will put the most stringent requirements, especially if they're going to be the ones who have to verify. And so, to have a baseline in light of, where they are presently and other tasks that they have been given, I think I would feel more comfortable knowing that there is some baseline minimum there for them to springboard off of.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L4. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. L4 fails. To the bill, is there Rep. Bottoms?
There is Rep. Bottoms. There he is, right here. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we can see how, with that last amendment, we can see how this bill could be used very badly to hurt other people from friends, people that are maybe ex-spouses, ex-boyfriends, girlfriends. They could use this to hurt somebody, that they would all of a sudden walk into a gun store and not be able to buy a gun because supposedly they signed up, and when they didn't. And that was what the last amendment was about. Now we're trying to look at maybe another possibility here of the same kind of, it's in the arena of the same conversation. What happens when someone makes a makes a request to not be able to buy a gun for whatever the reason. I mean, this bill is bizarre to me in how this goes down. But I mean, you could theoretically just not buy a gun. But let's say somebody makes that decision that they want to actually fill out paperwork for this, and then they say, well, I want my girlfriend to be the person that is contact. I'm married. I'm talking about a makeup person. Thank you. So they say to the when they're filling out the paperwork, let's let my girlfriend be the person, the point of contact person for this, and then they break up. It would be nice for that person that has been put on that list, if they don't want that kind of connection or responsibility, to be able to say, well, I don't want to be that person anymore, and so they want to be removed. With that, I move 034 to 008.
And ask that it be properly displayed.
And it can be displayed at the discretion of the displayer.
L8 is properly displayed. Rep. Bottoms.
So it says here, a contact person may request to be removed as a contact person. Upon receipt of a request, the Bureau shall remove the requester from being a contact person. Pretty simple, pretty basic. This allows for relational changes or attitudinal changes or commitment to the person changes or anything that would fall under any of those categories. We just want that person to be able to back away from this whole process and this whole procedure through the paperwork and the information that the CBI has on this. And so I urge the sponsors to vote yes on this amendment.
Rep. Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to be clear on what can be accomplished with rulemaking. I think, a contact person is just a contact. They are not a decision maker. And we can have conversations. We give the authority to the executive director to implement things like this during the rulemaking process, and that's a conversation that could be had, but this wasn't something that came up during the stakeholding process as far as contacts wanting to be on and then off again, and so I would urge a no vote on this amendment.
Is Rep. Bottoms.
So the contact person, let's say that this was an abusive relationship and they just got out of this abusive relationship. We don't want them to be tied to this person. There's reasons why this person decided they didn't want to be able to buy a firearm, and maybe it's for reasons like this, and so now we're almost making this contact person be connected to this abuser. And so I urge all of us, for the sake of the person that is being abused here, that they can actually be disconnected from this individual and not be forced to be tied to them once they have finally freed themselves from this abusive relationship.
Is it Rep. Bradley?
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair. I agree. Listen, I get stakeholding, guys, but we're the legislators in here. We are the ones writing the bills. At the end of the day, it's us. And so when members of the opposite caucus come up and say, hey, did you look at this? Then can we leave the door shut and talk to each other? Because I feel like they're running the show right now. And I'm a little tired of it, to be quite honest. What has happened in this building today, I'm a little tired of it. The Bureau is behind in rape kits at this point. So maybe the Bureau can't be making all the decisions on this bill. If there's an abusive relationship and a woman has put her ex-boyfriend on as the contact list and is now scared for her life because the abusive boyfriend is now the ex-boyfriend that is going to harm her, then the very least we can do is remove him as the contact person. This is silly. These are little amendments that we're asking for. We shouldn't be begging. Please vote yes.
Rep. Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Yeah, I think this is just, when we keep saying we can give this the opportunity to be handled in the rulemaking, with all due respect, that's why we're here. I think this is something, this one, the last amendment, those are just opportunities for us to get this as clean as we can, to hand it over to somebody to implement into law and make into a working, functioning thing without having any pitfalls or without having anything that can be misused. Anyone that would end up being in a bad spot. And this one particularly puts someone in a bad spot because whether it's a relationship gone bad or whether it's a family member that they've just completely shut off from, they don't want to be involved in whatever they're going through anymore. It's just a perpetual reciprocal thing. They don't really want to be involved. They can just say, they have the ability to say, I want to be removed as a contact. I don't want to be contacted for any of these issues. This is too much for me to handle. This is getting too stressful. This is wearing on my family. Please take me off this list. It's a simple thing just to put in there for that little breakaway for somebody to be able to not have to worry about being that point of contact when that point of contact becomes this toxic tie to somebody that they really just want to get away from. So again, I think this is a simple thing to add. I encourage and I vote.
Rep. Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are a few quizzical looks in the audience, so I think I'm going to start from the very beginning just to make sure that some of us are on the same page. As designed, this policy contemplates an individual who is suicidal being able to go to the government, i.e. the Bureau, and say, I'm concerned about my own safety, and I'm concerned that I might do something impulsively that would cost me my life. And since there is a mechanism through the national background check system that would prohibit me from accessing the purchasing a firearm, I would like the government to put me on that list such that I am not able to purchase a firearm for a particular period of time until I actually voluntarily remove myself from that list, and then there is a 30-day wait period after that. So I file my initial waiver, or my initial waiver, and I say to the Bureau, please put me on the databases that would preclude me from being able to legally purchase a firearm. And then when I no longer feel at risk, then I take myself off of that, and then the Bureau has to wait 30 days before removing it to give a little bit of a grace period. But one of the other things that I might do under this policy as drafted is provide to the Bureau 1 or 2 contact individuals who would be told that this is all happening. So I list a friend, I list a family member, I list a coworker, and at the time that I make that initial filing, those people are contacted and told, hey, this person is feeling, well, actually, we're not sure what they would be told because that's not really outlined, but presumably they would be told this person is concerned about their own safety and are suicidal, potentially, and so you have become their contact. And in the event that they try to purchase a firearm, you will be contacted again at that point. Now, what this amendment contemplates is for that contact member, that family member, that friend, that coworker, to be able to say, you know what, I'm really not comfortable with serving in this role. I have other stuff going on in my own life, and I can't take that added responsibility. I don't think I'm best positioned for this. I think that somebody else should have to take this responsibility. So what this amendment says is that those people can raise their hands and say, thanks, but no thanks. I think that there is a reasonableness there. Otherwise, you're basically contributing someone into a story that they may not be well positioned to handle. Having been the one who answered calls at 2 in the morning for weeks on end with someone who was suicidal, and having different mental health agencies and other groups contact and say, or the police or whoever, say, you know, we're again in contact with this person, we are again having incidents with this person, can be a very weighty thing. And so there may be very good reason why someone would want to remove themselves from that responsibility, especially if it comes with the idea that those people are to reach out a hand and help. Because again, while many would want to, not everyone is able to do that. And so all this says is please don't voluntold someone to serve in this capacity.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L8. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. L8 fails. To the bill, is there any further discussion? See, Rep. Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're talking about things pertaining to the mental health of an individual, and that individual being able to identify themselves as somebody that should not be able to purchase a firearm, and using the government as that tool of intervention. So if the person was going to purchase a firearm, they would be flagged, they would be cited and given a civil infraction. But there's nothing in there that addresses why that person went to purchase a firearm after they put themselves on this list. So if we're going to be citing somebody, they're going to be charged a civil infraction, and they're going to be otherwise some punitive action for trying to purchase a firearm after they put themselves on this list. There's clearly something there that needs to be addressed. I think if somebody's already in enough crisis that they're using the government as a form of intervention to keep them from purchasing a firearm for themselves, I think there's enough mental health crisis there to be concerned. But then if that person still goes and tries to purchase a firearm, that person definitely needs to be checked on. That person definitely needs to be just getting intervention. And we have that. We have methods of intervention with our law enforcement. Our law enforcement has co-responders. They can go with them on calls and be able to address mental health concerns, address mental health crisis, people that are in emotional crisis. And I think that tool should be implemented in this as well. I didn't see that tool anywhere mentioned in the language of the bill, but I think it should be. So I move L009 and ask that it be properly displayed.
One moment. L9 is properly displayed. Rep. Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is that method where somebody can, during a transfer, during that moment where they're flagged for being on this list and trying to purchase a firearm, it would initiate a contact with the local sheriff jurisdiction that they fall into, that would initiate a welfare check. That would be a responding law enforcement officer and a co-responder if available. That way that there's somebody that can make contact with that person that's professionally trained to interact with somebody who is in a mental health crisis or otherwise is in a moment where they might not be completely okay. So giving law enforcement the tool to get involved with a co-responder and contact this person, have a face-to-face, see what's going on, see why they are trying to purchase a firearm after they put themselves on this list. This is one method where we can say we have a tool, we have something in place for an intervention. That intervention shouldn't be a citation with a civil infraction and a $25 fee. That should be them making face-to-face contact with somebody that can address, hey, what's the problem? What can we do to get you help? And that's what this amendment does. It provides that notification to the local sheriff's office to respond with a co-responder if available, to be able to make contact with that person and see what's really going on. That is a form of intervention, not just something that is punitive on a person that's trying to purchase a firearm after they put themselves on this list. Great amendment. Vote yes.
Is there any further discussion? Rep. Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support this amendment as well. As my colleague from Berthoud just brought up, if they voluntarily put themselves on this program and then they need to go and try to purchase a firearm, there's something happening there, whether they maybe forgot they put themselves on there and now they want to hurt themselves, or maybe they're in danger because I don't know how long. Let's just say this is a couple months after they put themselves on there. They're in some kind of danger now. They want to go purchase a firearm, and they can't. So if you have the sheriff intervention there, whether they're trying to hurt themselves or they're in danger, you're at least having some kind of check there, which that makes sense to me. So I certainly would support this amendment.
Rep. Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I remembered the other day when one of the good representatives for Douglas County, not the one in the well right now, said that Colorado ranks 46 out of 50 states for mental health. So again, I understand the bill sponsors and the intention of this bill. So we're just good with, okay, they've called and now they can't buy a firearm, and then what? And then we don't do anything? Then we wait for their contact person to help them? So now they're on a list, and what? This is a great amendment. Let's at least have somebody do a check on them. I mean, isn't that what our community and our services and what our taxpayers pay into? This is a great amendment. 46 out of 50 states. I mean, we're not doing great on anything, by the way. Third least safe state. I mean, you hear me up here all the time. We're killing it, killing it. 46 out of 50 in mental health. So they're on the list, they're suicidal, and nothing else. The least we can do is provide them with some sort of mental health check, have our sheriffs go by and say, hey, is there anything you need? What resources can we help you with? What community help can we get you? What do you need from us to ensure safety, especially in rural Colorado, where they might feel alone and without a lot of community support? This is a great amendment. I couldn't believe it when they put it up because I didn't know about it, and I read it and I was like, this is an amazing amendment. Let's help the people in our community that are struggling with suicidal ideation and vote yes on this amendment.
Rep. Armagost.
In closing, thank you, Madam Chair. This, especially for where we represent in Larimer County, I think is big, and Weld County both have very good mental health locations where those co-responders do work with North Range and Summit Stone. The ability for somebody to, if they are in this place of crisis, they volunteered themselves on this list, and they are trying to purchase a firearm. This amendment would get the law enforcement contacted. That local law enforcement agency would come talk to them. If it is somebody that's in fact in crisis, they can get them to those locations that they can get some even inpatient care. They can talk to somebody. They can have somebody to talk to, get them out of crisis, potentially get them down the road to recovery where they won't be on this path anyway. So again, I think this is a great amendment. This is something that, again, is easy to implement and just simply flags this for law enforcement to get an intervention, a form of intervention rather than anything punitive. So I encourage an aye vote.
Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to my colleague from Larimer and Weld County for the amendment. We are going to ask respectfully for a no vote on this amendment for a couple different reasons. The first being this would represent an unfunded mandate on our local law enforcement, on our sheriffs to have to respond in this capacity. We are certainly cognizant of that. We also believe that ultimately, while I know this is not the intent, it would represent an invasion of privacy for someone who believes that they've signed up on a confidential form in a confidential program so that they themselves can exercise that piece of personal responsibility to remove themselves from the ability to purchase a firearm for a determined period of time. And to share that then with the sheriffs or any other entity, I believe would really breach that confidentiality and ultimately have a chilling effect on the program. And so there is a separate process in place already, the red flag log, ERPO, where if a mental health provider or if a member of law enforcement or somebody else feels that someone is a risk to themselves and there's a firearm involved in that situation, there already is a process to be able to address that risk. And so as it stands, we would just simply ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion? Rep. Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am curious, so this amendment ties into when an individual who is on the do not sell to list goes and attempts to purchase a firearm, at which point that is deemed unlawful attempted firearm purchase, which on page 7 subjects that individual to a civil infraction and a fine or a potential fine. And so when we talk about unfunded mandates, I guess I'm just curious as to who the bill sponsor contemplates will issue that particular civil infraction and whether or not that too will be an unfunded mandate. And if that will be the sheriff's office, then what is the problem about also asking the sheriff's office while issuing the infraction to also make a call or bring a co-responder with them to engage this particular individual?
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L9. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. L9 fails. To the bill, is there any further discussion? Rep. Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So keeping with the conversation we had before about contact people, I move Amendment L011 and ask that it be displayed.
One moment. L11 is properly displayed. Rep. Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All this amendment does is say that the contact person has no liability under this section. They aren't expected to do anything. If they do something, there's no liability that comes from it. There's no risk to them for being a contact person. I don't think we should have people be at risk for being unknowingly applied to fill this position, so I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Rep. Jackson.
Do you know how many times I've heard that? I know. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate this amendment, but there's no language in the bill that says that a contact person has any more responsibility other than being a contact person, just like similarly with anyone else being a contact person for anything. And so I would request a no vote. Thank you.
Rep. Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's a great example of why this needs to be in there, is the fact that it's not in there. There's no language saying whether or not there is liability or not for the contact person. So I think this is another opportunity just to put it in language so it's in the bill and we have that clear as day for anyone to understand. There's no need for anyone to assume this is going to happen in rulemaking or any of that. This is in the bill. I encourage an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L11. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. L11 fails. To the bill, Rep. Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is actually a bill that I think does try to get at a real problem we have in Colorado, and but I think everything can be improved a little bit. So I would offer, or I move Amendment L012 to Senate Bill 34 and ask that it be displayed in a manner pleasing to the chair.
One moment. L12 is properly displayed. Rep. Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In looking through the bill, in the body of the bill, it requires that once a waiver has been accepted from an individual, that it be put in the system within a 24-hour period. And I think getting it in place rapidly when somebody makes that individual request is important. But on the other end, when somebody has decided that they would like to be taken off this no purchase list. There's 30 days to revoke, and that seems tremendously lengthy for somebody that voluntarily gave up their rights and now would like to reclaim them. This is especially true after we passed on a 41-22 vote Senate Bill 25-145, which was kind of the one-click ending of online contracts. This is something we have just passed off the House floor, where we expect local businesses to be able to do something in one click, and I think we should be able to hold our state to the same standard we're trying to hold our businesses to. So this amendment would just reduce the 30 days required of the state to a 3 days period, which again, also consistent with our 3-day waiting period. So I would just ask for a yes vote on this. Thank you.
Rep. Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of this amendment. And I understand, I'm sure, the bill sponsor's intentions with the 30 days, but I don't think there's any kind of science behind why it's 30 days other than it's a nice round number and it's 1 month. So it doesn't need to be 30 days. What if it was 29 days or 15 days? 3 days, we can actually tie it to some of the other arguments we've used on some of these gun bills, such as the 3-day waiting period because of the impulsiveness, and we're making people wait that 3-day period before they purchase a firearm in case they're having some kind of medical emergency. So why is it 30 days? Let's just lower it down to 3 days. And then if for some reason they wanted to put themselves back on, within 24 hours they could go back on. There's just 30 days is a long time once you decide, hey, everything's fine, I'm okay. I don't see any science-backed studies or anything of why it's 30 days. 3 days, we have 3-day waiting periods, it makes sense.
Rep. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good amendment. I would ask for consideration of this. Y'all like a change in that 30-day period. It's a long time to wait. If there's a situation where it's even for a matter of being able to defend yourself, you get past, let's say, a crisis moment, you're past that, and you want to be able to revoke that waiver, it ought not to take that amount of time. I think a shorter period after you've had your crisis moment, after the crisis moment is over, I believe that it makes a lot of sense to be able to come out of that situation as easily, or at least within a 3-day period, as it was to be able to get into that waiver situation. So I would ask for an aye vote on this.
Is there any further discussion? Rep. Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the amendment. We would ask for a no vote because 3 days, is not enough time to allow a crisis to pass, for someone to get healthy, for someone to connect with adequate resources, and so I request a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L12. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. L12 fails. To the bill, Rep. Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to hold off on speaking to the bill at the moment here. I do have an amendment, and the amendment is very much kind of in line with this 30-day provision. And for that, I move L005 to Senate Bill 34 and ask that it be properly displayed.
One moment. L5 has been properly displayed. Rep. Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what L5 does here is it requires a disclaimer. Now, I imagine, I would hope that they put a disclaimer on there, but unless it's in law, unless it's in the statute, then we can't be sure. So all this does is it requires that the person who is filling out this form, this voluntary form, they are somewhere notified that if you fill this out, you will not get it back. your rights back for another 30 days once you revoke this. I think that's very fair. We put disclaimers on literally almost everything. Tube of toothpaste, yeah, has disclaimers on there. I imagine that there will be disclaimers, but again, we won't know for sure unless we put it in statute and we say that you have to put this disclaimer. So very simple amendment, very easy. You're just making sure that people know that when you decide to revoke this, you're going to have to wait 30 days. So I certainly urge an aye vote on this amendment.
Rep Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so kind of version B of what we were just talking about here, that if 30 days, if that is, and I will not agree that if somebody signs a waiver, that there is a mandatory period of 30 days, even after they say that they are feeling better, they've had their crisis moment is over, and they would like to have their rights returned to them. 30 days does seem like a long time. So at least what you do is warn them. I suppose this could be an opportunity for me to talk about the disclaimers on gas stoves, about the attempted disclaimers on gas pumps. That's not to this amendment, though. So to the amendment. To my colleague's point, we do put disclaimers on pretty much everything. So being able to let people know ahead of time what it is, at least understand what all is involved with the waiver, understand what is all of the details. I don't believe that in any way this would harm the overall intention of the bill, just to ensure that people know exactly what it is that is at stake and what it is that they need to consider before making these decisions. A simple disclaimer just allows them to do that. Again, doesn't change the intent of the bill in any way whatsoever, unless there's a punitive nature that I'm not understanding. I never really felt like this was supposed to be punitive. I don't believe that the bill is written to be punitive, although I guess I'm starting to feel like maybe that perhaps is a little bit more of what we're getting at if we're not agreeable to making sure that people understand exactly what is at stake with something like this on a simple disclaimer. So I would encourage an aye vote on this amendment.
Rep Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also urge a yes vote on this amendment because when we're talking about mental or behavioral health and someone is in a crisis, we need to make sure that we're making it the easiest for them to get the information when they're making a decision about their health. We need to be treating mental and behavioral health just like we do physical, and anytime they do anything with the physical aspect, they have a waiver. Or the provider tells them what's going to happen. They're going to go and parachute. They say, well, make sure, let's say a hot tub. They make sure you don't have any ongoing, medical issues. You're not pregnant. You're not on certain medications. There's a waiver. There's a disclaimer there on hot tubs for physical. And we talk about all the time in this building that we want to treat mental and behavioral just like physical health, which we should. And this is ensuring that we're doing that. When someone's in a crisis mode, they're not going to always look at everything. They're not going to go and do all the research because they're trying to figure out what's best for them in the moment. And what best for them in the moment is keeping them safe. So let's help them keep themselves safe while also giving them all the information in a simple format and show them that, yes, we do value mental behavioral health. Yes, we're going to treat it like physical health. We want to make sure you're making the best decision for you, and we're going to give you all the information for your self-anatomy. We want to make sure you know what you're doing. And you know what? When someone's going through a mental crisis, and, sometimes because they might have a good day and then they have a couple bad. They might have a couple bad weeks and then a good day. But if they are in a good day and they're like, I think I want something, and then they realize, no, I don't have this anymore, I wasn't aware, we could very much be pushing someone into another mental crisis. And that's not what we want to do. We want to help them get healthier, not add any undue stress or anxiety because they're not fully aware what's happening. So I would urge a yes vote so we can stand up to Colorado and say, yes, mental and behavioral health is going to be treated and with respect, just like physical health. And yes, we want you to know what's going to happen. And we're going to add this waiver, just like we do for physical health on a hot tub with the waiver. Let's add this for this so that way they can fully go through without adding any extra anxiety or stress to their already crisis moment. I'd urge a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to my colleague for this amendment idea. We're going to respectfully ask for a no vote. This is something that is easily accomplished through the rulemaking procedure. Certainly share those same considerations in terms of the waiver process. We feel like this is something that could be accomplished both through the portal and also then through that rulemaking process.
Is there any further? Rep. Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
I'm going to look to the co-sponsors on this and say, please, this is a very reasonable request, that the individual fully understands that there is going to be a 30-day period after they voluntarily take that off. That's only fair to CBI. It's fair to the individual. It's also fair to retailers that may be involved in this. I realize it could come up in rulemaking, but why not just be right up front with the individual so that there's absolutely no question that there is going to be a 30-day period after they revoke the waiver. Doesn't hurt the bill one iota. And it's just a much better form of communication to tell somebody right up front on the form, this is what you're going to go through if you in fact revoke this waiver. You are going to have to wait 30 days. I'm one of those folks that likes to be proactive. I just don't see a reason why this hurts the bill one iota. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L5. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. L5 fails. To the bill, is there Rep. Luck?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move amendment L010 and ask that it be displayed.
One moment. L10 is properly displayed. Rep. Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We debated over the last 2 days due process, constitutional rights as relates to a particular population, and in that bill was a term similar to this. Actually, it was the impetus for this. Basically, what this amendment would do is ensure that if CBI were to fail to properly remove an individual from this list within the time frame contemplated currently under the bill, that CBI could be responsible not only to an injunction to force them to do it, but also to a $50,000 fine. That will ensure that CBI keeps up on this and that we don't have a backlog such that individuals who would otherwise desire to obtain a firearm for their own self-defense would be prohibited or restricted in doing so after they otherwise should have been removed from that restriction. I ask for an aye vote.
Rep. Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what's fair is fair. Unfortunately, we've had to run a bill on CBI because they backlogged rape kits in the state. This is only fair to protect our constitutional rights, that we make sure that our information is taken off. And the best way to do that is by money. And so money talks. And we just added this to a bill that we heard this very morning when we were all talking about due process. Due process is also saying in this bill that this is going to be removed. So in the spirit of equality, make sure the data is taken off the database. Make sure that the information is taken off. We just heard it. Person after person testify to that penalty. And we know that CBI is lagging behind on some crucial things. And here we are going to give them the power to put people's personal information in, and we need accountability that that personal information is going to be taken out. So if we want to be transparent to the people of Colorado, we will accept this amendment. I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to my colleagues for this amendment. We're respectfully asking for a no vote. The expectation and standard is clear. The expectation and standard is clear in statute in terms of CBI's obligation to remove someone from the database. We feel that the legislative process is the best place to handle should there ever be an instance that needs to be corrected. And certainly our Legislative Audit Committee is an appropriate vehicle for those activities as well. So share the concern. We have not seen this be a concern and other states have implemented. I would also really silo this bill from some of the other shared and very serious concerns related to rape kit testings in the state of Colorado. That is not what CBI is doing through this bill. Those are not the same folks who process these things. And so I hear those concerns, I share those concerns. However, we feel CBI is adequately staffed to be able to handle this workload and the responsibility to remove someone's data.
Is there any further discussion? Rep. Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I will just highlight the fact that if data privacy is being handled in one area of law as relates to private actors to this level, then I think it's only right that we submit our own state actors to the same level of expectation and liability in the event that they do fail to meet this burden of removing folks in a timely manner. I continue to ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us. A division has been called. The committee will go into a brief recess. The committee will come back to order. The question before us is the adoption of Amendment L10. A division has been requested. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please sit and remain seated. All those in favor of Amendment L10, please stand and remain standing in one place or raise your hand and keep it raised until the count is taken. You may be seated. All those opposed, please stand and remain standing in one place or raise your hand and keep it raised until the count is taken. You may be seated. Amendment L10 is lost. To the bill is Rep. Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the point of this is there's a lot in this bill that is definitely more punitive than it is restorative or with any kind of repair or ability to get direction into treatment. And I think with some of the amendments that were offered, there were those methods. There were those at least interventions where somebody could be involved in getting somebody to treatment, getting somebody to the care that they need rather than any kind of punitive form of action. There doesn't need to be a punitive form of action. There doesn't need to be something like that simply to get somebody's name put into the system to be flagged. I think that there are better ways of doing this, or if we did have to do that, at least having some form of a contact that they can make, some form of intervention where somebody can get that person to the level and method of support that they need. So if we're going to have that the way it is, and I mean, there has to be another way of doing this, at least with removing some of these portions of punishment. So I move L002 and ask it to be properly displayed.
One moment. L2 is properly displayed. Rep. Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So all this does is it removes the civil infraction and the $25 fine. This takes that punitive action away to where the person that is already in crisis, enough so that they use the government as a form of intervention to simply stop them from being able to purchase a firearm, but now put themselves in a place where they're going to be punished with a civil and financial expense. So I think this is only fair for the people that we're trying to help and not hurt or further push into a dark space. So with this, I encourage an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to my colleague. I don't disagree, and you'll notice in the bill we have chosen like the lowest of lowest standards for this, and it's not because there's an attempt to be punitive here. It rather comes to us from FBI guidance that was provided to the state of Washington that says that in order for states to use the NICS system, there needs to be some sort of consequence inside of the process that would mandate or necessitate the access to that system in the first place. And it's designed to be sort of a disincentivization to states that might run someone through that NICS process with willy-nilly, right? Just running names. And so as a result, the FBI actually issued guidance saying that in legislation that enables access to that system, there needs to be some sort of penalty. Obviously, we have chosen a civil penalty and a very low-level civil penalty at that. And I would highly doubt that it would actually ever be utilized. And so I don't disagree with where you're coming from with the ask. I just have to ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L12. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. L2 is lost. To the bill, is there any further discussion? Rep. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I could get up here and say that I want to speak to the intent of the bill if I'm saying that I generally always think that the intent is good. And I will default to that. However, I just don't think that it's very well thought out as far as I do believe that this can be incredibly punitive. We're talking about a revocation. You put in a waiver request to say you're having a crisis moment, and then the punitive revocation lasts for 30 days, even after the point at which you say that you're past your crisis moment, you want that back. I worry about coercion from family members. Worry about the coercive element that could be to get somebody to sign up for a waiver like this. And without a disclaimer talking, the amendment that we tried to run, without a disclaimer talking about what that 30 days might look like, you then don't have the ability to return your rights back to yourself because you've signed them away, unknowingly signed them away, and unknowingly signed them away underneath coercion. So, you know, I worry about a number of things with this bill. Again, I'm going to assume good intent, but I worry about a punitive nature where we tried to address it through amendments, and there was a refusal to address it through amendments, and so the punitive feel to it still remains. The element for opening of coercion from family members, but then also just a chipping away. It seems like this is just yet another attempt to chip away at the fringes, one way or another, at gun rights. It's a way of saying, yeah, I could see the list being immediately, populated with people that have no intent whatsoever to ever own a gun, just to prove the legitimacy of the program. For those that are truly having a crisis moment, they should know at least ahead of time what's at stake, and it shouldn't take them 30 days to regain their rights. So overall, I do not intend to side like the way that this bill is drafted. I will be a no, and I ask for a no vote as well. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Rep. Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have another amendment. So I move L006 to Senate Bill 34 and ask that it be properly displayed.
One moment. L6 is properly displayed. Rep. Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a part of this bill is that we are building this online site using gifts, grants, and donations. And so just for the sake of transparency, we would like to see in our SMART Act hearings that we do annually at the beginning of the session where the money is coming from. I believe the number is $200,000 in the beginning to establish this website, and so, or this system. And so, for the sake of transparency, if we're bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars in gifts, grants, and donations, let's just add this to the SMART Act hearing. I imagine this will probably go through judiciary SMART Act hearings. We've got 50 million of them. What is 50 million plus one for government transparency? I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing would prevent judiciary, I'm sure in a very succinct and not verbose manner, as I've experienced in that committee, from asking questions in the SMART Act hearings related to, I thought it was a funny joke. Thank you, appreciate it. From asking questions related to this program. It's our understanding as well that the gifts and grants and donations would be subject to CORA. That's something that you could easily fill out a CORA request for. And also, the bill doesn't actually implement until that $209,000 mark has been met. And so that will be also a good tipping point to know whether or not the gifts, grants, and donations have been received. So we think there's process already. I think at this point, adding something like this into the bill raises the question of a fiscal note where we feel like existing processes speak to this. So respect my colleagues' desire for the amendment, but I will ask for a no.
Rep. Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will just on the mic give you props for making that comment about the Judiciary Committee. And for those watching at home who aren't familiar, he was being sarcastic. This amendment I rise in support of. As you guys can well understand, there is a lot of turnover in this place, and those who are here while this is created may likely not be here by the time that this money is raised. And so having it just on the list of things to report to that committee keeps it top of mind such that it doesn't get lost in the myriad of other hundreds of thousands of things that go on in this place. So I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L6. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. L6 fails. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 34. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 34 passes. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 27.
Senate Bill 27 by Senator Marchman, also Representative Joseph, concerning the use of trauma-informed practices to address school safety in connection with making appropriation.
Rep. Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 27, the Appropriations Committee report, and the Educations Committee report.
To the Appropriations report. Rep. Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the Appropriations Committee, actually, we just made some technical amendment, J003 and L10. What we did was strike the current appropriations clause because the bill is being funded through gifts, grants, and donations, and there was the word fund in the bill, so we just struck those words out as well, and we ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Appropriations report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Appropriations report passes. To the Education report, Representative Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in the Education Committee, we did have some amendments to the bill. So one of them was to include charter school representation of the work group that we are implementing. So we had that, and then to my colleagues on my side of the aisle, we actually threw in a petition clause. So that was passed, that was part of the agreement of this bill. So we have a petition clause on this bill, and we ask for an aye vote.
Rep. Story.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move, did you just add an amendment?
No.
Okay. I move L011 to Senate Bill 27, an amendment to the Education Committee report, and ask that it be displayed.
L11 is properly displayed. Rep. Story.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I worked with the bill sponsors on this amendment that we heard this bill in committee, and the amendment is just addressing the, it amends how the appointments of members is made, in that it ensures that they are made through the advice of an associated department or agency or statewide professional association or organization for all the various members to the work group. And it also adds an additional position to the work group to ensure that there is a specialist of trauma-informed practices on the work group, which is the sole purpose of the bill.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L11. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L11 passes. To the Education Committee report, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Education Committee report as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Education report as amended passes. To the bill. Is there any, Rep. Joseph?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is a pleasure to work on Senate Bill 27 with Representative Gonzalez, and I also want to thank Rep. Story for her great work in making this a better bill, and I ask for a yes vote.
Rep. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to be perfectly clear about what this bill does. This bill does not mandate or force or require school districts to basically exercise what this work group intends to do. Some school districts have the resources to be able to make these trauma-informed practices. Other districts, usually smaller ones in the rural areas, do not. And so I spoke with my district to the people who were involved in this. So the school district, school board, the superintendent, who are all in support of this policy. This is just basically forms a work group that has expertise, which is what the amendment that Representative Story brought forward, is to make sure we have experts in the field related to trauma-related practices. Now, again, this does not pertain to specific events, but also just events in general that cause trauma in school, outside of the school. And I also want to make clear to my colleagues that this does not pull from the general fund. This does not impact Tabor. This will be relying on gifts, grants, and donations. So originally the fiscal note was about $150,000. We got that down to about $50,000 to $70,000 is the range, which we believe we can get with gifts, grants, and donations. And we ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 27. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Senate Bill 27 passes. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 017 for consideration.
So moved. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 17.
Senate Bill 17 by Senators Cutter and Judall, also Representatives Joseph and Zokai, concerning measures to support early childhood health by integrating early childhood health care systems into communities.
Rep. Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 17.
So moved. To the bill. Rep. Zokai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
Members, I am excited to present Senate Bill 17 along with my co-prime here. It's been great working with her. This is a bill that I deeply care about as a mom that has 3 little kids. This is about codifying a program that serves kids age 0 to 3. And as a mom to a 1-year-old, it's just a time when they are changing so quickly and it can be hard to keep up. And I know how hard it is when your child isn't meeting milestones and you're seeing delays and you don't know what to do and how to help. And that's where this program comes into play. So Healthy Steps is an evidence-based pediatric primary care program. It provides support to both the providers and to the families and has a tiered model of services for children through the integration of trained child development and behavioral health experts into the clinical care team. And what we are asking everybody to do today is to help us codify this program into the Department of Early Childhood to be in line with best practices. And it is a great step forward for our state, and I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Rep. Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, is there anything that precludes right now under state law pediatricians from being able to bring in folks into their medical practice for this kind of whole child, whole family health specialist function? Is there anything that precludes them from doing that?
Rep. Zokai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative, for your question. There is nothing that precludes pediatricians from bringing in extra help. We are just trying to make sure that help is available for those who need it most.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 17. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 17 passes. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 75.
Senate Bill 75 by Senator Gonzalez, also Representatives Espinoza and Bacon, concerning the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board's consideration of an individual's criminal convictions when issuing a license.
It's like 3 committee reports.
Rep. Espinoza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move SB 75, the Appropriations, Finance, and... Just finance? I thought you said there were 3.
We don't have approps? Finance and judiciary.
Okay. Sorry, Finance and Judiciary. You just said 3, confused me.
To the finance report. Rep. Espinoza.
Yeah, you do the finance.
Okay. AML Bacon.
Thank you. In finance, in fact, we will talk about it in the Judiciary Committee report. Members, this bill is fairly short. However, we got some requests from the Department of Revenue to be able to clarify some language on who makes the licensing and certification decisions, as well as descriptions on when the look-back period begins. So in finance, we thought we were clarifying that some cleanup language from the Senate around the executive director being able to make decisions. And that was pretty much the Finance Committee report. And with that, we ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the finance report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The finance report passes. To the judiciary report.
Okay.
Rep. Espinoza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the Judiciary Committee, we were also attempting to make some clarifications that were at the request of the Department of Revenue, and yet they asked us to make further clarifications, and so we would move L007 to the Judiciary report.
And ask that it be
And
properly
ask that it
displayed.
properly be displayed.
L7 is properly displayed. AML Bacon.
Okay, so here is where we actually pull everything together that we did in finance to what we did in judiciary. So this asks for a strike of the Judiciary Committee report to put all the information in the same place. Ultimately, we said that the 3-year look-back period begins at the end of incarceration or I think the end of the conviction date, whichever is later. And then we also stated here, we pulled out executive director and the board so that DOR knew the decision on the licensing goes to whoever makes that decision, whether it is the board or executive director. And so we need this amendment. We also added language that matches the language for occupational licenses that says, unless generally, if there has been a crime committed and it was not in the last 3 years, that should not be considered, except if it is a crime associated with cars or automobiles. And so that is what the language is. It is comprehensive to give clear instruction, but at the end of the day, it provides the clarity that the look-back period is 3 years. And with that, we urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L7. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L7 passes. To the bill. Rep. Espinoza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The fundamental purpose of this bill is to bring some equity between what we did last year in the legislature with regard to occupational licenses to this provision, which is in the Department of Revenue, for individuals who've been convicted of a crime. Right now, there's a 10-year bar for those individuals going back into any kind of business with regard to automobiles, automobile sales, or the power sport vehicle sales. So what we're doing here is giving DOR the authority to still evaluate that determination of whether the person's eligible, but reducing that time period to 3 years, which, as I said, is consistent with the occupational therapy timeframe that we have in another part of the statute.
AML Bacon.
Thank you, and I do want to give a shout out to my colleague from Adams County, Rep. Byrd. House Bill 1004, yeah, leadership. Sorry. And last year, that was the bill that we passed to bring occupational licenses down to a 3-year look back. So we pretty much copied the same language into the automotive space. Members, this bill was voted unanimously out of judiciary, out of finance, and appropriations, because we all believe that if people serve their time and they do train, and they could really thrive and have what we call the dignity of earning and supporting for their families in work, that they should be able to do so. So we have affectionately called these types of bills second chance hiring bills. They were supported by the industry. The executive director of the independent auto dealers came to testify because the industry is asking for this. And so with that, members, I hope you remember this when we vote on thirds. We would really love to see a unanimous vote, as it is a really good bill. So thank you all. And again, we urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 75 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 75 as amended passes. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 189.
Senate Bill 189 by Senators Liston and Snyder, also Representatives Soper and Espinoza, concerning requiring a jury to determine whether a defendant has prior qualifying convictions and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Rep. Espinoza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 25-189.
To the bill?
To the bill. So, Madam Chair, this bill is a bill that was necessary because the U.S. Supreme Court issued a case of United States versus Erlinger, and in that case, there was a requirement that if a state is determining a habitual criminal statute, there must be a jury trial. Currently, under Colorado law, that trial is done by a judge. What this bill does is implement those provisions as required by the Supreme Court's decision, and we are now putting a proceeding in place for the determination of a habitual criminal into the Colorado statutes.
Rep. Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my co-prime sponsor from Denver. Excellent description of what the bill does. This is a very simple bill to codify the Supreme Court's holding within Colorado law, and if we didn't pass this, well, we would actually still have in statute. Oh, yeah. And it came out of the Senate unanimously and has mostly been unanimous in the process. But this is really, if we don't make this change, then Colorado statute is in violation of the federal Constitution as interpreted by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 189. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
Good job.
The ayes have it. Senate Bill 189 passes. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 272.
Senate Bill 272 by Senators Winter and Catlin, also Representatives Velasco and Froelich, concerning a sales and use tax exemption for construction materials used in creating housing for a regional transportation authority staff.
Rep. Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 272.
To the bill. Rep. Velasco.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. This bill states that it is within the governmental capabilities of an RTA to house employees, and that RTAs may create or renovate property for the purpose of housing employees. By including this express power in Regional Transit Authority statute, it allows RTAs to take advantage of the existing sales and use tax exemptions for labor and materials needed for affordable housing projects. So this is a very important bill for our transportation districts across the state, and this will definitely benefit my transportation district, RAFTA, the Roaring Fork Transportation Authority, and I urge a yes vote.
Rep. Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bipartisan bill that bridges the urban-rural divide, we ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 272. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 272 passes. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 297.
Senate Bill 297 has been laid over. Until Madam Majority Leader.
I move to lay over Senate Bill 297 until Monday.
Senate Bill 297 has been laid over until Monday. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 302.
Senate Bill 302 by Senators Kippen Simpson, also Representatives Garcia and Zokai, concerning extending the Achieving a Better Life Experience state income tax deduction.
Rep. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 302.
To the bill. Rep. Zokai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 302 is an extension of Colorado state income tax deductions for contributions to 529 ABLE accounts. These are specialized savings accounts for individuals with disabilities to be able to set aside money for essential expenses without jeopardizing their federal benefits. These accounts help folks pay for housing, health care, education, and transportation, and we are asking to extend this tax deduction through 2030 to let individuals with disabilities know that we trust them to make decisions about their own future and that they have our support.
Rep. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, the ABLE was passed federally in 2014. In Colorado, we did this in 2017. These accounts are designed to help support the most vulnerable in society. To qualify for an ABLE account, you must be considered severely disabled as defined by the Social Security Administration. In Colorado, we have about 3,000 total accounts, and the average account size is approximately $11,000 in assets. If we don't continue this program, we don't allow these individuals who need this support to be able to continue getting this deduction, and we ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 302? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 302. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Senate Bill 302 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 288.
Senate Bill 288 by Senator Rodriguez, also Representatives Titone and Soper, concerning preventing certain disclosures of intimate depictions and in connection therewith, creating a cause of action for non-consensual disclosure of an intimate digital depiction, and adding and amending related provisions in criminal law.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 288 and the House Judiciary Committee report.
To the Judiciary report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In Judiciary, we ran several amendments. I actually can't remember how many, but it was quite a few just a couple of hours ago. And most importantly, what the amendments did was it defined what broadcaster is so that it's in line with other areas of statute. We also removed the part about it being entirely a fake image. So now it has to have an identifying mark or facial feature of a juvenile under the age of 18. We also had some clarification with the type of harm. We removed that it would be a felony level 6 if the intimate images disrupted an election, a judicial proceeding, a legislative proceeding, and that's mainly it.
Is there further, Representative Titone?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did have one amendment that we added on that had some issues with some of the members, and we have an amendment to address that concern. And I move Amendment L015 to the committee report and ask for it to be displayed.
All right, one moment.
That's okay.
It's a short one.
It is displayed. Representative Titone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an issue that has come up before. Last year when I did the bill for, you don't look pleased with that. When we did the deepfake bill, because we were having these deepfakes be produced for political purposes that could be dangerous to elections, we had provisions in there, and the original provision we had in the amendment was actually verbatim from the law we did last year. We have to have some way to say that if Photoshop sort of software, I don't want to, that's a brand name, I guess I said it already, but if there's like a program like that that is used to make this kind of AI image, it's not the company that makes the software's fault of what the person used the software to make that image. And that should be shielded from liability. Although, if you have a company that makes software for the express purpose of, for this bill, making intimate images of people without their consent, then they would also be exempt from that, and we didn't want that to happen. So we're attempting to remedy that with this amendment, which will strike part of the committee report, which the original amendment, and we opened some conversation about it with our colleague here if you have some comments. But this is what the problem is that we don't want to put the liability on the company that makes the software if it's being misused by someone who is creating a bad image with that software.
Is there further discussion on the committee report? Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering, Madam Chair, if you can perhaps give me some guidance on how to engage in this conversation, because in order for me to understand this amendment, I feel the need to ask specific questions that might have specific names of companies.
Well, specifically, we're not really supposed to do that. Representative Garcia, you are a creative person, so I'm sure that you will be able to navigate this situation. Okay. Representative Garcia.
All right, let's see how well we know these companies. Here we go. This is a trivia night. So, if there's a company that might be called Mid-Travel, you know what I'm talking about, maybe? Okay, their sole purpose is to generate imagery, like, so the entity under which created Mid-Travel or Full Journey, they would be barred by this, but the actual half course would not.
Is there further discussion on the committee report? Representative Zokai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in opposition to this amendment and really to the bill as it stands currently, because what we saw in judiciary is that there was an amendment to exempt AI companies from liability, even if those companies were being used to create pornographic materials of children. And I do not buy this argument that AI companies cannot fix this and that they cannot build systems that bar somebody from making a pornographic image of a child. In fact, I think the best way to motivate companies to build software that does not break the law is to make it a violation if they are used in creating that material. If we exempt them completely from liability, we have truly taken away any incentives for them to build these guardrails. Now, I would be open to giving some sort of affirmative defense rather than exempting them from liability, stating that if they did truly build those guardrails and somebody hacked the system and made pornographic material of a minor, that really the company is not to blame because they put those safeguards in place. But instead what we have done in this bill is say that they are not ever to be held liable. And I am deeply concerned that if we put that exemption into law, that we are creating an environment for these AI companies to run rampant. And let's be honest, we are just starting to see what AI truly can do. This is going to continue to grow and be a bigger landscape. And I cannot support something that from the outset of when these companies are taking off and starting to become mainstream use, to say they have no liability. And so I urge us to really vote no on this amendment. I believe the sponsors are trying to work through this issue, so I'm hopeful that we will come up with some sort of middle ground. Great, and it seems like I'm not going to say to vote yes on this just yet, but I'm glad that we're working something out. Great.
Further discussion on L15, Representative Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support this, and I understand what my colleagues that are in opposition, I understand their position that we had in committee there about not basically foregoing any liability on these AI companies. But the point that was made by the bill sponsors and frankly the witnesses is that with this new technology, these companies are trying to put in certain safeguards to prevent this inappropriate type material from being produced on their platforms. But what we find is even when a system, an AI company puts these safeguards, people are creative. They can get around it. They can say, okay, you're blocking me from just outright, generating this. So how about in the next image, generate something along these lines? Okay, now generate, and people find ways around it. It's AI, it's not an actual person thinking, so it's where we're at right now with technology. It's unable to just say, we know exactly what you're trying to do and we're just gonna stop it. You can add a little bit more, and a little bit more. And these companies aren't creating these AI systems to generate these issues that the bill is trying to address, like such as, child pornography. But the point is if you're using their system inappropriately, then that's on you. That's not necessarily on the AI company. The AI companies are already, for the most part, trying to prevent certain inappropriate things from being done. People get creative, they find ways around it, and you shouldn't necessarily be holding the company liable because someone is misusing it. And I think the example that the Attorney General's office used was, look, if you buy a car from the car company and then you go driving it down the wrong lane and you hit and kill somebody, that's not the car company's fault that you misused their product. And that was the example that was given in this circumstance. So again, I understand the opposition's take on it. It's not about just foregoing any liability. It's the fact that it's an imperfect system as it is, and to be hitting them with hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines because someone else misused their product, I think is unfair and unacceptable. So I urge an aye vote on this.
Further discussion on L15, Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to just take a minute to explain to those who probably have never used a system like this on how it works and why we absolutely cannot give companies a free pass because it's not simply somebody misusing. The way that this system works is that you have an individual that goes into the system and types in a series of commands. These commands do not result in anything that's guaranteed. What happens is they hit enter, then the AI platform will take the commands and itself will think, I'm going to put maybe 3 or 4 options for you. Boom. They'll shell out 3 or 4 options of an image based on the commands that you submitted. They'll ask you, do you like this? Do you like that? Do you like this? You can continue to go through and figure out if you want to improve on the image, if you want to change the image, if you want to add something, take something away. So the reality is that these companies themselves are actually creating the image. They're not just being misused. So giving these companies a free pass of liability is not actually going to help this situation in any way. They're the ones who should not be allowed at all to create child pornography imagery. But here we are giving them a free pass, and even with this amendment, we're giving them a free pass. The question is, do we actually care? Do we care about ending the creation of child pornography or not? And then when we're not holding the companies liable for it, come on. Child pornography is a serious issue. Whether it's based on a real photo, collected from a series of photos, whether it's generated through AI, the impacts of child pornography are far and wide. And as many of you know, it destroys lives. And we cannot take light of what this is. A company that allows for this to happen must be held liable. I'm working on an amendment to bring as a substitute to this one. And it is slowly coming.
Representative Titone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I withdraw the amendment for now. We would like to workshop this for a little bit and see if we can come up with something else. So we would appreciate a little bit more time to do that.
All right, L15 has been withdrawn. To the Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move Senate Bill 288 down to after Senate Bill 310.
All right, 288 has been moved down the calendar. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 281.
Senate Bill 281 by Senators Carson and Snyder, also Representatives Espinoza and Armagost, concerning careless driving resulting in serious bodily injury.
Representative Espinoza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 25281.
To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a bill which has moved through the houses, both houses so far unanimously. It is a bill that was changed dramatically in the Senate. In fact, there was a strike below for the Senate to rework the bill. And there is a commitment by my co-prime and myself and the senators in this case that we will continue to work on this issue. This issue involves careless driving resulting in serious bodily injury or death. What this bill does, it adds this crime to the VRA, victim rights, so that individuals, families who are survivors can get access to those benefits and support. And it also, importantly, makes clear that it was not the legislature's intent to take away the opportunity to charge for multiple persons' injuries. Recent case law out of Colorado Supreme Court determined that legislature had changed the law so that only one charge could be made against an individual regardless of how many people were injured or killed. This bill rectifies that problem.
Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, my co-prime pretty much listed out what the bill does. This is definitely something that the victims that we heard from all the cases, well, not all of them, but some of the cases here in Colorado that were some of the most tragic, and just people that lost somebody, and the person that was involved, or the perpetrator of the incidents, based on careless driving, had very little accountability for the things that had happened, and it left the victims feeling like, the surviving family members of the victims feeling like the victim that they lost, the family member that they lost, didn't get the recognition that they deserved for being lost in such a horrifying and horrible incident. So this is definitely something that helps rectify that. And in those cases where there is a potential for any kind of chemicals being involved, this does mandate that there is chemical tests. No?
Was that taken out of this?
No, disregard my last. But it's something that we can at least get for a stepping stone into the right direction for where we need to go with this bill. So I encourage and I vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 281? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 281. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. 281 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 310 as amended.
Senate Bill 310 by Senators Kirkmeyer and Bridges, also Representatives Byrd and Taggart, concerning the implementation of Proposition 130 and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 310 as amended.
Is there an appropriations
No.
report? No, okay. Okay, to the bill. Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, just to refresh your memory, this bill was laid over as amended from May 1st. On Thursday, for those keeping track, both the appropriations report and also amendments L009 and L010 were adopted. We're moving forward with those amendments and have another amendment. I move amendment L013 and ask that it be properly displayed.
All right, give us just a minute. All right, that is displayed. Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is a simple amendment which corrects a statutory reference and also makes the word warrant plural. I ask for a yes vote.
Is there further discussion on L13? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L13. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. L13 is passed. Representative Byrd.
I move amendment L015 and ask that it be properly displayed.
That is a proper motion. Give us a moment. All right, it is displayed. Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this amendment provides clarity on the taxability of the death benefit that is provided within this bill. We ask for a yes vote.
There further discussion on L15. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L15. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. L15 is adopted. To the bill. Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, members, this is the implementation of Proposition 130. For many years, peace officers have been asked to respond to an increasingly wide array of public safety, behavioral health, and social service issues that arise in our communities without always having adequate resources and tools to do so. Colorado's voters recognize the need to support our peace officers in protecting community safety when they pass Proposition 130 in November. By funding additional recruitment and retention efforts for Colorado's peace officers, we can better support the needs of both our officers and our community members throughout the state. We ask for a yes vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 310? Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to put on the record that I have some concerns and reservations about this mechanism. Basically, for those who are not up to speed on this, it's my understanding that the General Assembly is taking $500 million out of state reserves, which is our rainy day fund, our emergency reserves, and putting that into para, not for purposes of para per se, but to have the investment mechanism that is para with its higher rate of return of 7.2% return, so that the interest that comes off of that 500 million can be used to start to pay this 350 million. I'm being signaled as if. Okay. I have had conversations with members of the JVC on this before, so just a little bit curious. In any case, so the $500 million is invested into PARA's investments in order to receive that higher rate of return, so that that interest rate, the 35 million, up to 35 million, will go to pay this liability that was created by Proposition 130. I have some concerns about that because, one, this is our emergency reserve, and when you put it into an investment of that nature, now I understand that the liquidity is still there to a similar degree. It can be taken out within 30 days, but I am concerned, especially in our current economic climate, that you put that in to these kinds of investments and it is less secure of an investment, such that we could see diminishing returns, if not diminishment of that 500 million. That concerns me. That mechanism concerns me. I also am concerned that in other areas, for instance, in Orbital this year, that determined our commitments to the Department of Transportation, that this 10-year commitment for these $35 million increments will, in future legislative sessions, especially if the picture is bleak, may also be amended such that we don't fulfill this commitment within that 10 years, and we have a similar BS factor or something of that magnitude. I also have concerns related to why we can't find $35 million out of the general fund for this commitment, and yet we continue to spend more and more dollars on new liabilities. And so those are just succinctly my concerns. I have discussed them more at length with a member of the JVC, and I could discuss them more at length here, but I think for now I just wanted to put that on the record.
Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I sincerely appreciate both your concerns and our conversation on this, and we'll continue, I hope, to have this conversation. Let me start by saying the $500 million is still a part of the reserve. We're not taking it away from the reserve. It's still a portion of the reserve. And I think you have all of our commitments at the JBC. We want it. That 15% is important. It's a rainy day fund, and we want it to remain that way. I do realize, having said that, there is also a risk. Anytime that you put an investment out there, there is a risk of it being reduced. However, we looked long and hard at the return rates that para is in fact gaining on a long-term basis, and the 7.2% is over a very long period of time. I can't recall whether it was 10 years or 20 years, but it's a very significant number. Now, are we going to have ups and downs? The answer to that is yes. But over the longer term, this has been a good rate of return, and it's not too it is actually lower than what I'm used to in the S&P. So I think it is a conservative number. And so, and then your concern about future members of the House and what they might do, I think we have to remind everybody as we pass this baton that 130 was voted on by the people of this state on behalf of our first responders. We have to honor this commitment. And we have to, and one of the reasons, if you recall, when we talked about this on Thursday, the days are just getting blurry. But on Thursday, that we also said this number in terms of a return, will never go below $15 million on an annual basis. And if we have to make that up in the general fund and put that as a priority in the JBC, the answer is yes, we're going to have to do that, because we're making that commitment, because we do not want this to go more than 10 years. So I understand it's a new approach. I understand your concern about being able to claw back the $500 million, but I believe a lot of thought and energy has gone into this to do this the best we possibly could, given our financial circumstances. And I would ask for a yes on this, on Senate Bill 310.
Representative Clifford.
Are we okay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to acknowledge our JBC members for taking this on. When you're handed a $350 million pre-spent check by the voters in a year, when you also have to cut $1.2 billion from the budget, I'm certain that probably wasn't the most fun thing to have to figure out the math on. I do want to talk a little bit about the policy here, because I know a lot of you have asked me about my view on this prop, considering that I have been engaged with it since December. You are going to hear from some people that this is not enough money. And that is true. When you divide this across all of the municipal and county law enforcement agencies in this state, no matter how you divide it, for some of them it's not enough. But please remember that this is new money that they have not had before. And this is state taxpayer money that they have never had before in this way. So I'm very proud that the state will be able to provide that for them. And we can all agree that it's not enough. You are going to hear some consternation about probably several small things, but what I want you to know is at the end of the day, as I watched everybody work through this process and try to work through compromise after compromise after compromise in order to accomplish what you ultimately see here, is pretty impressive. You know, to work with the Department of Public Safety to get the administrative costs significantly down, and to work with all of the stakeholders across the board to be able to accommodate something that might actually work is what is important here. And I'm glad that we're getting it implemented this year. I'm glad that we will be able to start getting funds out next year. I'm glad that we already have someone that will get a death benefit that is due them already, unfortunately, but it's good to know that we're going to get that done. So I, too, urge a yes vote today and on thirds. Thank you.
Further discussion on Senate Bill 310. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 310 as amended. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Senate Bill 310 as amended is passed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 288. No?
Senate Bill 288 by Senator Rodriguez, also Representatives Titone and Soper,
We're going back to 288. Okay.
concerning preventing certain disclosures of intimate depictions and in connection therewith creating a pause of action for non-disclosure of an intimate digital depiction and adding and amending related provisions in criminal law.
Madam Majority Leader. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move Senate Bill 288 to Monday.
All right, Senate Bill 288 will be moved till Monday. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 320.
Senate Bill 320 by Senators Bridges and Kirkmeyer, also Representatives Byrd and Taggart, concerning commercial motor vehicle transportation and in connection therewith, reinstating and extending the sales and use tax exemption for certain heavy-duty motor vehicles, components, and parts, adjusting the bridge and tunnel impact fee schedule for state fiscal year 2025-26 through 2027-28, and making an appropriation.
Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move SB 25-320.
To the bill.
To the bill. This bill is all about the bridge and tunnel impact fee and diesel fuels in particular. And when this was initially put in place in 2021, it had a 2-cent per gallon surcharge. This bill, it would have gone up this next year to 5 cents. This bill takes it up to 7 cents. It still, over a period of time, only goes to the maximum that was called out in 2021, which is in fact 8 cents. It is critical to the ongoing maintenance and upkeep of bridges and tunnels, which are very, very important to the infrastructure of this state. That's the first component of this bill. The second component has to do with low-emitting vehicles exemption. We have done an exemption applied to heavy-duty trucks that complied with certain emission standards established by the EPA of our federal government, and that this applies to vehicles over 10,000 pounds and use certain types of alternative fuels. This particular exemption ran out at the close of 2024, and this brings it back effectively on August the 1st of this year, and then goes through December 31st of 2028. And we ask for an aye vote on this.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 320? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 320. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Senate Bill 320 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 319.
Senate Bill 319 by Senators Bridges and Mobley, also Representatives Burton Taggart, concerning the administration of the income tax incentive for certain higher education costs incurred by eligible students and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
I do want to go.
Representative Byrd,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 319.
to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is a cleanup bill to the Colorado Promise bill that we passed last year, House Bill 241340, which helps provide families with a refundable tax credit if you make $90,000 a year or less, and helps cover the cost of in-state tuition in our public institutions of higher education, also occupational schools, community colleges, and different trade schools as well. We needed to make a few changes to clarify some details in this bill to help our institutions of higher education implement this and make the tenets of the bill easier to comply with. We ask for a yes vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 319? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 319. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Senate Bill 319 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 316.
Senate Bill 316 by Senators Mobley and Bridges, also Representatives Taggart and Sirota, concerning requirements for money appropriated to the Department of Higher Education and in connection therewith making adjustments to appropriations made in the Annual General Appropriation Act for the 2025-26 state fiscal year and making an appropriation.
Representative Sirota,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 316.
to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill makes the appropriation for AHEC, the Auraria Higher Education Center, which administers the campus that 3 institutions of higher education reside on, and makes a more direct appropriation instead of a multi-step process, but also requires AHEC to conduct a comprehensive study to determine what is the best way for creating this contract for the state. And I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 316? Representative Taggart.
Thank you. I know we have completely lost my caucus over here, with the exception of Anthony. Whoops, excuse me.
They do still appear to be
I'm
here,
sorry.
Representative Taggart, at least in body.
I just want to remind my caucus to the bill that this is budget neutral. It's not additional dollars.
All right. Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 316? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 316. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Senate Bill 316 is passed.
Thanks.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move the committee rise and report.
All right, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection and lots of enthusiasm, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Shebel, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs the report is under consideration. The following attached bills, being the second reading thereof and making the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bills 17 is amended, 27 is amended, 34, 75 is amended, 189, 272, 281, 302, 310 is amended, 316, 319, and 320 passed on second reading. Order revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bills 288 and 297 laid over until May 5th, 2025.
Representative McCormick. Members, you have heard the motion. We do have amendments at the desk. I know, right? Mr. Shebel, please read the first Armagost Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report, Senate Bill 34.
Representative Armagost moved to amend the part of the Committee of the Whole to receive action taken by the committee and not adopting following Armagost Amendment L4 to Senate Bill 34 to show that said amendment passed. That Senate Bill 34 is amended passed.
Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the first Armagost Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report and ask to be properly displayed.
Oh my goodness. It is properly displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, colleagues, again, this is just simply requiring that somebody offer two forms of government-issued ID, identification, so that they can be identified as the person that is putting themselves on this list. So it's not given the potential where somebody could be fraudulently representing themselves as somebody else and in some form of being able to weaponize it or use it as a form of abuse and coercion for somebody. I think we need to just make this, if somebody is in that much of a crisis where they feel like they need to use the government to step in to keep them from purchasing a firearm during a dark time, it should be actually proven by a couple of different forms of identification, government-issued identification, for that person to say, this is who I am. And that way there's no potential for somebody to be fraudulently misrepresented and being able to carry out something that could be used as, like I said, a form of abuse or coercion. So I encourage and I vote.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, CBI already has an extensive process that they use to identify people when they are purchasing guns, and we don't need to interfere with their existing operations or their existing processes, so I would encourage a no vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of the first Armagost Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Shebel, please open up the machine and members proceed to vote. Foray is excused and fined. What's the score of the Nuggets game? Okay, $58. I'm kidding. Please close the machine. With 23 aye, 38 no, and 4 excused, the amendment is lost. But we can all tell her she's, whatever the score is when she comes back, that's the fine. All right. Mr. Shebel, please read the second Armagost Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report, Senate Bill 34.
Representative Armagost moved to amend the part of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Armagost Amendment L9 to Senate Bill 34 to show that said amendment passed, that Senate Bill 34 is amended passed.
Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the second Armagost Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report and ask it to be properly displayed. No booze.
It is properly displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are in a situation, I think, where we need to be focusing, and I've said this, whenever firearms seem to come up in any kind of bill, I always talk about the fact that we need to focus more. If we focused a fraction on mental health as we do on firearms, we would get a lot more accomplished. In this bill, we have the opportunity to address the mental health aspect of this rather than just intervening on the purchase of a firearm. While we can intervene on somebody's self-assessment and their ability to self-volunteer themselves on this list, why can't we form some bridge for them to get the intervention to treatment that they need? The bridge to get them to treatment, just simply that vessel. And that vessel can simply be a call and somebody coming and making contact, that deputy, that officer with the co-responder that can talk somebody off of a ledge. What's making you get to this point? You already did this. What's making you get to this point? Let's go talk to somebody. Having this in here is simply providing that vessel, and I think that's something that can make this bill a little bit more palatable for all of us, especially for those people that are actually going to use this. I can't think of any situation where I would see myself needing to put myself on a list where I can't purchase a firearm, no matter how dark it is. I know people get into dark places. A lot of us have been there, but this is something where if I was doing something like that, it would probably be a call for help. And in purchasing a firearm, it would probably be that opportunity for me to get that call for help. That can simply be a transport to a facility where you can talk to somebody that can get you that help. So for this, I would encourage an aye vote, and we can make this bill something that proves to be the intent that it has on the front, but it isn't in the language. So this puts it in the language. I encourage a yes vote.
Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleague. I share the concern and the commitment to making sure that we address mental and behavioral health, specifically as it relates to gun violence. I would say that I don't believe that the proper response as it relates to the goals of the bill is to send law enforcement to your house. I think ultimately that will have a chilling effect both in terms of the confidentiality that people feel like they deserve and have gained through opting into this program voluntarily. Not every law enforcement entity has a co-responder model. I certainly lift up Larimer County and Weld County as being a good example of those that do. I think those are wonderful programs. But as it stands, simply sending law enforcement to your house, I don't believe would actually serve the goals, which is ultimately to empower individuals to take that first step forward if they know they're in a moment of crisis or they sense a moment of crisis coming on. A lot of folks have been on that roller coaster that is mental or behavioral health or addiction, and ultimately they can take this action proactively, put themselves on the list. What would happen next, ideally, is that they would be able to remove themselves from that list at their own request. Should there be a need for law enforcement engagement, we already have red flag laws and ERPO as a result. We're asking for a no vote on this amendment, but I do want to highlight that I take the mental behavioral health pieces seriously, and that is something that we should work on together.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of the second Armagost Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 27 aye, 34 no, and 4 excuse, the amendment is lost. Mr. Schiebel, please read the third Armagost Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report, Senate Bill 34.
Representative Armagost moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in adopting Senate Bill 34 to show that Senate Bill 34 lost.
Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the third Armagost Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report and ask that it be properly displayed.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, again, if we're not going to have the methods of getting that vessel, getting that person into treatment, this bill simply impedes on a person's ability to legally purchase a firearm. That doesn't get that person away from any other means of harming themselves. What that does is simply removes that person's ability to legally purchase a firearm. So I don't see, I'm not going to say the logic, it's just that I don't see the purpose of the bill being served if we're only doing this to impede the person purchasing the firearm. In the early stages of the interim, hearing from the Senate sponsor of this bill to try to convince me that it was a good bill, it was worse then. There were things on here that were far more concerning that still concern me to where this bill could lead into. The fact of the matter is, this bill has been whittled down to a point that that's the only purpose that it serves, is it prevents that person that volunteers himself to be on this list, they volunteered to not be able to legally purchase a firearm. It doesn't mean they can't find other means of harming themselves. I think if we're going to do something purposeful in this bill, it should be providing that bridge and that vessel for that person to get the help that they need. So if we're not going to provide that in this bill, I think that we need to get through this today so that we can get on with business with third readings and not have to bring this back again for another vote. I think that this is a bill that in and of itself does not serve the purpose that I think the sponsor's intent is to serve. I think looking more into this and having further conversations in ways we can make this something that's good, that rather diverts somebody to getting help, not just simply prohibiting their ability to legally purchase a firearm. So I would welcome further conversations and bringing this back another time, but I think that we should vote to reverse the action taken in the second reading, vote yes on this amendment, and thus making a no on this bill. So please vote yes on this amendment.
Speaker Pro Tem Basenecker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleague. Members, I just want to be clear procedurally, this is a vote on the bill, so obviously we are going to ask for a no vote on this amendment. I want to just share a couple quick statistics about why this bill is effective and why we're bringing this bill. In 2023, Colorado had the 13th highest rate of gun suicide and was 8th in the nation for overall number of suicides. When a firearm is used in a suicide attempt, there isn't an opportunity for a second chance, since it is always nearly lethal. 9 out of 10 people die. In 2023, 70% of all firearm deaths in Colorado were self-inflicted. And nearly 80% of Colorado veterans who died by suicide in 2023 used firearms. We know that surviving one suicide attempt makes all the difference. Approximately 90% of survivors of serious suicide take advantage of the second chance at life and do not ultimately die by suicide in subsequent attempts. The second chance is rarely available in suicide attempts by firearms simply due to their lethality. This bill is not speculative in terms of outcome. 4 other states have adopted a similar law with great success, meaning that people have ultimately been able to avoid what is a temporary issue in their life and avoid the lethality that comes with firearm suicide. I would suggest to you that simply giving people the option, and I would stress again, this is a voluntary program. Nobody is compelled to do this, but it is empowering for someone who is struggling with mental and behavioral health to know that they can take a step forward and ultimately keep themselves safe in a way that perhaps is not available to them today. That's why this law is necessary. And to give someone those tools to save their own life when they know they might be in crisis is, I think, a valuable service that we can provide as a state. If it is not right for you, it is not right for you. You shouldn't use it. But I can tell you that folks from other states have spoken to the value of this policy. A voluntary program that saves one life is worth it. Because that life might be your friend, your neighbor, your loved one, you. So from that regard, for a bill that is ultimately funded by gifts, grants, and donations, that creates a voluntary program for someone to recognize when they are in a precarious moment in their life, to be able to sign up and say, for this period of my life, I feel like I just can't have that firearm near me or next to me, and I shouldn't have the ability to purchase one. That is a choice that they should make. We should empower individuals to make choices that keep themselves and their family members safe. And so that's why I'm asking for a no vote on this amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the third Armagost Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 24 aye, 37 no, and 4 excuse, the amendment is lost. Mr. Schiebel, please read the Bottoms Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report, Senate Bill 34.
Representative Bottoms moved to amend the part of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Armagost Amendment, L8 to Senate Bill 34, to show that said amendment passed, that Senate Bill 34 is amended passed.
Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the only Bottoms Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole and ask for it be displayed.
It is properly displayed. Please proceed.
This amendment, pretty simple. It's saying that if you have say you have a couple that they're fine when one of them goes to have a request to be put on this list that they cannot buy a firearm. And let's say this couple, let's say he has this request, and then there's abuse, there's things like that, that she takes off, gets away from the abuse, gets away from the situation. But now, according to this bill, she's still tied to him, still tied to this request, still tied to all of this stuff. And it's basically a simple amendment that says just allow that contact person to say, I don't no longer want to be a part of this. This is not my world anymore. I'd like to step away, separate myself from this world. And without this amendment, that person that's being abused is going to be tied to this. And I don't think anybody in here wants that. So I would urge an aye vote on this amendment.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the instances of domestic violence, oftentimes there's a protective order that is in place. And as far as a contact person in this bill, this person is not a decision maker. This is someone that the person who voluntarily signs up for this, they trust and want them to be available and aware that they are in crisis. And so as far as this amendment is concerned, this is something that can be accomplished during the rulemaking process, and I would ask for a no vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of the Bottoms Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 23 aye, 38 no, and 4 excused, the amendment is lost. The motion before us is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 40 aye, 21 no, and 4 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, great work, everyone. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar till Monday, May 5th, 2025, 9 a.m., not 10, 9 a.m.
Seeing no objection, we will happily lay over the balance of the calendar until Monday, May 5th at 9 a.m. Mr. Shebel, delivery of bills to the governor.
The Chief Clerk of the House of
Delivery of the
Representatives.
bills to the governor will be printed in the journal. Members, we do have an announcement. Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Slight change to the calendar for Monday morning for House of Probes. Still at 8:30 in the Old State Library for Senate Bill 7, 163, 165, 304, and 290.
Representative Gonzalez. And Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I acknowledge I did not sign up to do this announcement, but we are just reminding you, members, that Monday is our potluck. So if you have not signed up, please do so. And to echo what our colleague from Denver says, if you can't cook, don't cook. You can buy something. But we hope that you will all participate in the Cinco de Mayo potluck. If we have a good turnout, we'll all have a great time. And I think this will be one of the great ways to end the session on a very positive note.
So as a reminder, Representative Gonzalez, what time and where? When should food be here? Is that yours, Madam Majority Leader?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. So we know it's Monday, May 5th, and the potluck will be, afternoon, midday, when we're ready for snacks. I also have the sign-up sheet here. A lot of you are not on it. So please sign up for anything, even if it's paper plates, cups, whatever it is.
Okay. Oh, salsa?
Salsa?
Thank you, Madam
Great.
Speaker.
Recess. Close.
Great.
I want to answer your question. You just asked where, didn't you?
Madam Majority Leader, I asked where this was happening. Can you tell everyone where?
Yes, you did, Madam Speaker. So this is happening. The food will be in our kitchen, and we'll be able to eat, kitchen, chamber.
Perfect, perfect. Let's, quick update. Avalanche game is still 0-0. All right, Nuggets are winning 62-50. What? Go Nugs. All right, Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move the House stand in adjournment until Monday, May 5th at 9 a.m.
The House is adjourned until Monday, May 5th at 9 a.m.